Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Glenorchy Planning Authority for Monday, 16th of May 2022. I'm Beck Thomas, Mayor of Glenorchy and Chairperson of this afternoon's meeting. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we meet on the land of the Palawa people and acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners and ongoing custodians of this land on which we meet. The Glenorchy Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. The Planning Authority has full power to make planning decisions on behalf of the Council. Joining me here today are my fellow Planning Authority members, Deputy Mayor Stephen King and Alderman Angela Ryan. We have apologies today from Alderman Jan Dunsby and Alderman Kelly Sims. Before we begin, I'll explain our meeting procedures as you can see on the screen. The Planning Officer will present their assessment and recommendation and then answer any questions of Planning Authority members. Please note at this stage a decision has not been made on the application. I will then invite the applicant and any interested parties to have their say by addressing the meeting. I will then ask the Planning Officer to comment on any matters raised. The Planning Authority then discusses the application before going to the vote to decide on the application, and our Senior Statutory Planner will then explain appeal rights. When deciding an application, the Planning Authority is required by law to seek to further the sustainable development objectives of the Act, consider representations received during the public notification period, and make the decision by reference to the current planning scheme provisions. Our meeting rules are pretty simple. We simply ask that everyone present at the meeting, whether that be online or in person, please comply with any directions given by myself as the chairperson, and of course respect other people's views and their right to have their say. Okay, that covers Planning Authority Declaration item 1 on our agenda. I have noted item 2, apologies tonight from Alderman Jan Dunsby and Alderman Kelly Sims. Item 3 is pecuniary interests. Do any Planning Authority members have any pecuniary interests?
I hope not.
No. We will note that. Item 4 is confirmation of minutes. So do I have someone to move that the minutes of the Glenorchy Planning Authority meeting on 20th of April 2022 be confirmed? Moved Alderman Ryan.
I suppose.
Seconded Deputy Mayor King. Any discussion of the minutes?
No, thank you. Yes, no.
I will put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand to indicate if you are for. It's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 5, our one and only item on our agenda this evening is Amendment PLAM 2103, Section 40K Report on Representations. And our Senior Strategic Planner, Lyndall, is presenting this to us this evening. So over to you, Lyndall.
Thank you, Chair. So this report deals with representation received to Planning Scheme Amendment Plan 2103. So that amendment basically involved a modification to the waterway and coastal protection overlay to rationalise that overlay, reduce the extent of the overlay where it applies to some wider areas of creeks and rivulets throughout the municipality and reduce that back to 10 metres. It also removes it from any kind of piped areas throughout the municipality. And the second part is to basically introduce flood-prone hazard areas overlay into the planning scheme. So the amendment was publicly notified from the 15th of February until the 15th of March. We received 2 representations, one no objection from Taswater, and the other one identified some issues in respect to Whitestone Point. So tonight's meeting is to discuss the merits of that representation. The representator indicated that it appeared that some of the flood modelling that was taken and used as development of the flood-prone hazard areas overlay seemed to be older than the current, heights and levels that now exist throughout the Whitestone Point subdivision area. So that is actually correct, and our hydraulics engineers have gone back and had a look at that data and recognised that the subdivision actually provides for appropriate measures to deal with flood-prone and stormwater management, and have agreed that it should be lifted from that area. So you can see in the image up on the screen there, the image on your left-hand side is the exhibited overlay, and the image on your right-hand side is a modified version of that overlay. So council officers recommend that modification be supported, and that the planning scheme amendment be changed to reflect that, and that the updated data be provided to the Tasmanian Planning Commission as a modification to the amendment. So basically the process from here is that when the GPA makes a decision, a recommendation, their recommendation, the representors' representation, and the modified version of the maps are forwarded to the Tasmanian Planning Commission. Tasmanian Planning Commission will then invite the representative to a public hearing. They can have their issues heard again at that point in time, and the Planning Commission will make a decision based on all of that information. So the recommendation here is that the minor modifications be made to the flood-prone hazard areas overlay. It's considered that these changes still mean that the amendment still satisfies the local provision schedule criteria, and has minimal, no actual effect on the Glenorchy local provision schedule as a whole. So that's the recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Lyndall. Do planning authority members have any questions for Lyndall? Alderman Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, Lyndall. I was just wondering, just to be super thorough, since receiving this representation and going back and checking the levels here, have the engineers checked other subdivisions where the ground structure might have undergone significant changes as this one has?
We looked at the possibility of doing that. We haven't gone back and checked all of those subdivisions, because the vast majority of subdivisions, we believe, will have already been addressed in respect to that management technique under the overlay. We also really think that there's probably only a fairly small number of properties that might actually be impacted by that kind of the timeframes in the data. But we're a little bit concerned that if we were to take those properties out, there might be some flood-prone areas issues that we haven't, that would not be addressed if the overlay wasn't provided. Just as a general assessment of the overlay, we believe that it's still appropriate to retain the overlay as exhibited to trigger a planning assessment, and make sure that any kind of potential for flooding is picked up. I think in the particular subdivision of Whitestone Point being such a large subdivision, and the works that we're undertaking that in that area, really have substantially changed the levels in that area. So other areas, we believe, if they are slightly impacted, they probably still should be assessed thoroughly against that flood-prone areas overlay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I think Lyndall's covered it pretty well.
Thank you. I was going to ask a similar question to Alderman Ryan, so thank you for that question. It sounds like it's a matter of better to be safe than sorry with those other areas, so I'm quite satisfied with that, I think.
Yep.
There's no other questions. We don't have any representatives here this evening with us, but we do note that we have received that one representation, and as Lyndall has said, that has impacted on the recommendation that we're putting forward. So we note that representation. We've received it in full as planning authority members, and we're grateful to the community member who has made that representation. Thank you. So if there's no further questions, I'll put the recommendation that the Glenorchy Planning Authority, after considering the merits of the representations and being satisfied that a change to the amendment will still meet the local provision schedule criteria and have no impact on the Glenorchy local provision schedule as a whole. 1, modify Plan 2103 as recommended in this report and shown in attachment 2. And 2, provide the representations and this GPA report on Plan 2103 on modifications to the waterway and coastal protection areas and flood-prone hazard areas overlays to the Tasmanian Planning Commission under Section 40K of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Do I have someone to move that recommendation, please? Alderman Ryan. Someone to second? Deputy Mayor King. Thank you. Alderman Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward matter, actually. So just to reiterate, the Planning Authority's assessment of this application needs to be provided to the Planning Commission under the Land Use and Planning and Approval Act 1993. The draft amendment in this application seeks to update 2 existing code overlay maps in the Glenorchy Local Provisions Schedule. The draft amendment has been publicly notified and 2 representations were received. The representations have been reviewed and it was considered the representation by Mr. Ellis has merit, and the draft amendment of the Local Provisions Schedule has been modified accordingly. The recommendation is that the modified draft amendment, together with representations, now be forwarded to the Tasmanian Planning Commission. So I support the recommendation, and as the Chair has said, we thank Mr. Ellis for his contribution.
Thank you, Alderman Ryan. Any further discussion?
Again, Alderman Ryan's covered it all. It's beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I too support the recommendations, submitting it to the Tasmanian Planning Commission for their consideration. Thank you, Lyndall, for your presentation on this matter. I will put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand if you are for. It's carried unanimously. And that will be, do we need to explain the process from here?
Well, I think
So I have.
when Brian summarised it well.
Summed it up. You've summed it up. Excellent.
No room to move on that.
No. Well, that brings our very short and sweet meeting to a close this evening at 4:15 p.m. See you all next time.